Greetings, everyone. P. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat. It's Tuesday night. Strap yourselves in. We got a fun show for you. We got a couple of cool guests tonight coming over from the Prog Report. Hopefully you saw me on there about a month ago. Well, they're on here now. We got Roie Avin and we got Vic Giol. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
How you doing? Good to be here. Happy to join you guys.
Good to have you. Good to have you on this drummers episode. We'll get to that in a second, but let me introduce the rest of the crew. We've got George Lemay.
Hey.
We got Ken Golden, the professor of Prague. We got our center square tonight, my fellow New Yorker, Chuck Alvarez. We've got our other fellow New Yorker, upstate. We got the city, we got midstate and upstate. We got Eric Porter. And from Pennsylvania, we've got Anthony Ferraro. Greetings, gentlemen.
Greetings.
Good evening. Good evening. You guys ready to talk about our favorite prog and fusion and maybe some jazz and prog metal drummers here? Top fives?
Sure.
That is the assignment of the day. But before we get started, I do want to give a happy belated birthday, and I apologize, Greg, because I've been meaning to do this for the last couple of days. Greg Stalnecker, I believe that's how he says his last name. His birthday was July 10th. He's an avid watcher of the show, and your wife actually sent me an email really asking if I could wish you a happy birthday. So hopefully you watch In the Prog Seat, because here's where I'm announcing it. So Greg Stalnecker, happy birthday, belated birthday, July 10th. Hope you had a great day celebrating your birthday. So thanks for watching us here on Sea of Tranquility. All right, now with that said, let's get on with our favorite drummers. So we've got five each. We're going to start at number 5. I don't know how serious everybody has ranked theirs. I guess it doesn't really all that matter, but we'll start with our number 5 picks, work our way to number 1. We'll go one at a time. We'll let our two guests go first. So Vic, I'm going to have you go first. Then I'm going to have Roy go. Then it'll be, and I hope I can remember this configuration. Then it'll be Anthony, right, Eric, Chuck, Ken, George, and myself. Hopefully I can remember that because I'm going across the Zoom zigzag. And if I screw up, you guys will remind me. So Vic, why don't you go first? Your first drummer, your first of your favorite 5 drummers.
Well, thanks, Pete. Great to be part of Sea of Tranquility. I'm going with a fat pitch over the plate. I'm knocking this one out of the park. When it was mentioned, you're talking about fusion, you're talking about prog. Kind of the first person that jumped to mind. He's from the classic era of progressive rock, and that would be Phil Collins. In the modern day of singles, he's known more as a vocalist, but his work in Genesis as a drummer, and then you bring in Brand X drumming. I think he fits the bill as well as anybody. And if anybody does not know his drumming style, just go back and listen to the stuff that he did with Genesis back when Peter Gabriel was there. And then, when Trick of the Tail came around and he was singing, but he was also in the studio playing drums, he's solid. So that's how we're starting this off.
Cool. I'd say he's pretty more than solid. Good choice. Good choice.
I mean, that was really going to be my number 5 also.
Oh, jeez.
Ironically. I'm wondering how many number 1s are going to be Neil Peart in this topic. That's what I'm worried about. I'm going to do a last minute change then because I had an honorable mention listed. And I'll just jump right in, I guess, and go with Marco Miniman at number 5.
Nice.
Who is, just an insane drummer. One of the drummers that I find most enjoyable to actually watch. His arms are going all over the place. The stuff he did with Steven Wilson and the Aristocrats and McStein and Miniman, and even saw him with Joe Satriani back a few tours ago, and he's phenomenal with him. He's a great musician. He has his own solo records where he plays guitar and writes all the music and sings. He's just a phenomenal all-around musician, and just a joy to watch, a joy to listen to, and does the most amazing drum solos.
Mindy, I need help.
You sure do.
Oh, God.
You sure do. No truer words have ever been spoken.
Or here, I don't know how I lost the video.
Stuff that's all too familiar.
Oh man, there's some nights, man. I just love doing this.
All right, so we got Marco Miniman. Good choice, Roy. All right, so since Anthony's having issues with his computer, we'll go over to Chuck for your first pick?
All right. My first pick, once again, good evening, gentlemen. My first pick is Gentle Giants, John Weather.
Nice.
You know, you can't go wrong with this guy. Most of the time you really don't hear too much about him, but he's a solid backbeat drummer, and the perfect drummer for that band, the Gentle Giant. He's my number 5, John Weathers, Gentle Giant.
Great pick. I don't know how I
Solid.
forgot about him on my list. Great pick, Chuck. I'm glad someone got him. Awesome. Eric, who you got?
Oh, it's interesting. Good evening first, gentlemen. And it's interesting because I listen usually for guitar, so I'm not always listening for drummers, but I think my list for the most part is going to be, pretty much down the middle, but I'm going with Barrymore Barlow from Jethro Tull.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I believe he was with them from Thick as a Brick through Stormwatch. And I just showed the Heavy Horses box set. Him and Glasscock, I know we did the bass player episode a while ago, just phenomenal. But he's such a good drummer. I know he played with Plant and Page. I believe he was in Malmsteen, right? He played on Rising Force.
Yep.
I just love his drumming, and I think he just elevated Tull. Nothing wrong with Clive Bunker, but I think he took them to a whole other level when he came in. So That's my number 5.
Much agreed.
Great choice. All right, Ken.
Well, you remember when was it? About a month or 2 ago, where I did the hardball list and the softball list.
Yep.
Well, I'm bringing back the hardball list and the softball list, and now I'm introducing a third list, the wiffle ball list. So this kind of
Ken, not to interrupt, but just so
Okay.
everybody knows, Ken has been playing this all week on us. So this better be interesting, Ken. That's all I'm saying.
Well, to me, it's interesting. So this kind of goes back to a brief conversation that Pete and I had, that we never talk about jazz. And really, without jazz, all these other players would be irrelevant. They wouldn't exist. So I thought it would be important to pay a little bit of attention to some of the jazz players. So I'm going to start with my wiffle ball list, and then we're going to go to the softball list and then the hardball list. The softball list are the prog rock fusion guys, and the hard rock, the hardball list is going to be the prog-metal guys. So I'm going to start.
You have 3 lists.
3 lists.
You have 3 lists.
Hey, you're going to see what's going to happen next week.
Uh-oh.
I don't even know what the topic is, and I don't care. I'm going to 4. Try and stop me. So I'm starting with Buddy Rich, and he was probably I think the most famous drummer that ever lived. The guy had amazing chops, and he was basically the benchmark that all drummers are compared against. He has the power, he has the speed. And George, please, because you're a drummer, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I mean, the guy played with incredible precision. In some ways, I think he was basically the standard. The thing is, he was so technical a player that I found that his playing was a bit cold. There was an emotional aspect that was missing from his playing, and you could kind of hear it on his albums. Nobody ever collects Buddy Rich albums. It just didn't age well. He played with, it was always big band arrangements of pop tunes, and they were just kind of showcases for his drumming. It got a little stale, and he was also considered to be this major asshole, and his rants with his band members are legendary. He was arrogant. He hated rock music, hated country music. Well, there I'm with him on that. Great drummer, shitty person, and I moved him down to the number 5 spot on that list because, his music kind of sucked, but from a technical aspect, the guy was amazing. So from my rock list, this is going to be pretty unpopular, I'm sure, with the universe. I'm picking Neil Peart. So I think he was an amazing drummer. He had amazing ability, but I see a lot of similarities with him to somebody like Carl Palmer. I moved him down the list because I don't think he's quite as versatile as some of the other drummers that I have on my lists. I don't think he has a proper feel to play jazz. What I heard was not very impressive at all. Based on comments that Carl Palmer made, he agrees with me. I'm sure he's going to be number 1 on everybody's list. And maybe if I was more of a Rush fan, he'd be higher on my list. I mean, he made my list. He was number 5. I just like the other guys better. And then on the hardball list, I'm going to start with Bill Ward. So for me, Bill Ward was, he was kind of the godfather of heavy metal. And if, you listen to the first Black Sabbath album, it doesn't get more progressive than that. I mean, if it wasn't for Bill Ward, there wouldn't even be a category. I don't think. I mean, he had this massive sound, and then it just became this sort of like amphetamine and alcohol driven monster.
Sabbath's Bloody Sabbath.
Yeah. So that's who I got for number 5. Those are my number 5s.
Bill Ward played a little swing, man, for a heavy band like that.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So.
All right, so just so everybody knows, Ken's probably going to take up about 45 minutes of this hour and 10-minute episode.
Well, probably, but
We'll go quickly.
well, it might be a free. We're going to take a pee break.
I will say
Just hold
those are
names
3
up.
really
We'll
good
let
picks, though.
Ken
I will
talk.
say, good picks.
After
This is not Ken of Tranquility. This is Sea of Tranquility.
why don't we take
Wow.
why don't we just plan on taking a pee break after the third? After we pick the third. So, but we're going to overlap, so we're going to have a lot of repeats. So it'll go fast. You'll see. I'll speed it up.
All right, Anthony's back. So Anthony, I see you're back with us. So why don't you go ahead?
All right. When Pete gave us this assignment, I've had kind of like a top 4 for a very long time, and my number 5 would be on any different day, could be somebody different. But there's a guy that I kind of go back to that doesn't have a lengthy discography, was kind of like a sideman. People, he was that good. So I'm going to go with, everybody get ready to drink. I'm going to go with, I got Jethro Tull A, Mark Craney, fantastic on this record. He also played on a Gino Vanelli record, Brother to Brother, which is fantastic. And he's also on John Luke Ponty's. George, help me out here.
Which one is he on?
Imaginary Voyage.
That's it.
Do you guys drink when Jethro Tull comes up? Is that what happens?
Oh no, we usually drink when Eddie Jobs.
No, Eddie Jobs.
Which he didn't say his
Big
name.
Eddie Jobs.
It's related to Eddie
But
Johnson.
Well,
But I'm going to go with Mark Craney, my number 5. He doesn't have, as I said, he doesn't have a lengthy discography, but I just love his feel, especially on the A record, like on tracks Batteries Not Included and Black Sunday. Just a nice feel, just nice in the pocket. So I'm going to go with Craney at number 5.
All righty, George.
I have a simple tie at number 5, as I couldn't separate these 2 guys because they're kind of linked. It's a friend of both channels, us and Prog Report, Mike Portnoy, and Neil Pert. Neil Pert
Wow.
is the guy that inspired me to play. Like a lot of people, I wanted to be Neil Pert. Neil Pert got to be more influential than pretty much everybody we're going to say tonight. And it's not chops, it's beat construction. This guy's, the beats are like a song within a song. He put a ton of work in. It's just very memorable drum parts above like what most other guys do. You anticipate the parts coming up. And that's something I feel that Mike Portnoy picked up on. Everybody knows he's into Peter Criss and Ringo and a bunch of other guys, but he doesn't sound like those guys. He sounds like Neil Peart, but like Neil Peart 2.0. He incorporated double bass and modern techniques, and he's been on probably like 4 or 5 times the amount of albums that Neil played on, which is kind of amazing that he's still as young as he is and playing on all these records. So I couldn't separate him, so that's tied for my number 5.
Well, Mike Portnoy is my number 5. Yeah, I mean, besides the fact that he's a hell of a nice guy and he's just a music nerd like all of us, which means a lot to me. I love his playing. I mean, I'm a massive Dream Theater fan. I've seen him play with Dream Theater so many times over the years. I've seen him with Sons of Apollo. I've seen him with Neil Morris Band. I mean, the guy fits well into just about anything that he steps into, whether it's straight prog or prog metal or straight metal or whatever. I mean, he could probably do a fusion album tomorrow and it would be awesome. I mean, he's got the chops, he's got the feel. He is he's got the personality and he's a star, right? I mean, he's a rock star, but I mean, more importantly, he's just a rock solid drummer that can shine in the spotlight or just provide what you need in the background to keep it all together. So Mike Portnoy, my number 5. And with that, we'll go back to Vic.
Okay.
Wow. That's a great list. Gosh, we're gonna have lots of repeats. So I gotta lead into this next pick. This guy's a fusion guy. I discovered him through a sequence of events. My dad is a drummer by hobby. Was self-trained, and we went to a couple of Dream Theater concerts, and he really enjoyed their music, and I would play him some stuff, and he then said, hey, this kind of sounds like fusion stuff, and the first person that he pulled out was Chick Corea. And Chick Corea was in a bunch of different things after Miles Davis. He had Return to Forever, and on an off chance that my wife and I were visiting New York, we got to see the Chick Corea Electric Band at the Blue Note. It was a bucket list item for me that I didn't even know existed when I was there. My wife said, hey, I got a surprise for you. Chick Corea's playing at the Blue Note. And I heard them play live. Steve Gadd was on drums at the time. That's not my pick. Steve Gadd was on drums in this band, and they played the Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy. So I got home, told my dad about the concert, and he pulled out Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, and I listened to it. And my number 4 pick is Lenny White. In many circles, Chuck likes the choice. Appreciate that. In many circles, I've read, in just historical standpoint, a lot of people call him the godfather of fusion when it comes to drumming. And when you listen to that specific album, it's with a little bit more modern production, and you hear everything that they play, I think it's more prog than fusion, but that was the label that was back then, but it fits right in with anything I listen to. So Lenny White gets my, I guess, number 4 spot.
My favorite, the Return to Forever album. Lenny White is a fellow art design guy. He went to the same high school I went to.
Oh, wow.
But many years beforehand.
Wow. That's an impressive alumni. Alumnus, excuse me.
All right, Roy, you're up.
All right, I'm up. All right, so I don't know if this is going to be a common pick. I suspect maybe one other person might have him on the list. I'm not sure, but I tend to favor a lot of the more modern era prog bands, just the music that I'm drawn to more. The sort of the reason why I started the website in general, anyway. While I love Genesis, I was going to pick Phil Collins and Yes and all the classic bands. One of the bands that really brought me back into prog and made it real serious for me after Dream Theater was Spock's Beard, and discovering their music was like a revelation. And the drummer Nick DiVirgilio, and that's going to be my number 4. And when I followed his career, and I spoke to him recently through a different interview that we did, and it occurred to me that he's been in a lot of my favorite bands. He's currently in Big Big Train, which I love very much. He played with Tears for Fears, which I'm a big fan of, and then he had a small stint in Genesis, of course, which hey, that very few people have that claim. So a phenomenal drummer, and again, amazing musician, the most annoyingly talented person, vocally, guitar-wise, everything. But I just love his drumming. He's a really groovy kind of drummer, and I love what he's brought to Big Big Train. So Nick DiVirgilio.
Great choice. Really good player.
Awesome.
Great.
All right, we'll get back on track here. So Anthony, you're up.
All right, my number 4. He's another drummer that's played with a bunch of fantastic virtuosos. Frank Zappa formed his own band in the early 80s, Missing Persons. I'm going with Get a Drink, Terry Bozzio off the UK Danger Money record. Just love his feel. Eddie Jobson brought him in after Bill Bruford left. So I'm going with Bozzio, number 4. If anybody can play with Frank, he can play the drums.
Yep.
That's true. All right, Chuck.
All right. My number 4 is from one of George's favorite bands, Vander Generator. I'm having Guy Evans. Guy Evans, what's it? Despite how much people feel about that band, and so the musicians, well, as far as he goes, and so he's a very groovy drummer. He's a fantastic drummer that can drum his ass off, man. Which is stuff that he's done with Vander Generator, stuff that he's done with Peter Hamill, Wish he would have been a bit more out there, and so to put his talents out there. He's done stuff with other people, but he's not mainly known for drumming on Vander Generator and Peter Hamill. And my number 4 is Guy Evans.
It's amazing how excellent all the musicians are in Vandergraaf. But I think that when you look back on the history, they're more known for like lyrics and the vocals of Hamill, I think, than the individuals who make up the band. So that's a great choice.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, good choice. All right, Eric, back to you.
Well, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon for modern or more modern prog bands as well. So my number 4 is Paul Ramsey from Ekelin. And the reason I'm picking him, Ekelin, when they started out, I feel like they were really a lot more technical. They were kind of going for that angle. So Paul handled that stuff very well. As they've kind of progressed through the years, they pulled back the reins a little bit. But I think Paul always has a great groove. He's a great drummer. He's very intricate when you listen to what he does. A lot of those songs are very intricate. He can do pretty much anything, I think, on the drums, and it's a little sad. I know he's not with them anymore. It sounds like that was not the most amicable breakup between him and the band. And I know they have Jordan Perlson, who's playing on the new album that's yet to be released. I don't know. They had so much time together. I'm going to miss him. I don't always listen for the drums, but that's a band that I've always connected with. And he came to mind immediately when this topic came up. So Paul Ramsey from Ekelin, my number 4.
Good choice.
Shout out for him. Yep.
All right, next up, Ken.
There you go. So first I have Lenny White. So Lenny, he started out as a jazz player, migrated into fusion, did a lot of straight ahead jazz as well. And as a solo career, his Venusian Summer album is a great fusion album. And I just want to give a pro tip for one album he did that people might not be familiar with. They should check out. It's by trumpet player Louis Gasker, and he made this album called For Those Who Chant. And it's a head-on collision of the original Santana band and Lenny White and Stanley Clark. It also has George Cables playing on it, and it's a phenomenal fusion album. Anyway, that's and I believe it's available on CD. Might be hard to track down, but worth it. From my prog rock list, I have Phil Collins. I mean, the guy could do anything. He was, great prog rock drummer with Genesis, jazz rock drummer with Brand X, a pop drummer doing all his Motown stuff. The only knock against Phil, and I love the guy, is he shit the bed when he played with Led Zeppelin at Live Aid. He sucked. So he just did. But
he may have been exhausted, because
that's true.
Direct across the pond,
But one of my, Genesis, one of my top favorite bands. Top 2 or 3 favorite bands, and I love him. So I got him number 4, and then on my hardball list, I have Virgil Donati, Australian drummer. Play with Derek Sherinian and Planet X. He's plays on a lot of metal bands, kind of like more or less, I think it's a hired gun. And his solo stuff is also kind of a mix of like heavy prog rock and fusion. And that's what I got for number 4. See, Pete, it wasn't so bad. I went fast. Very good. I'm learning how to speed it up.
Great picks, Ken.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're redeeming yourself because everyone you picked has been a home run.
Dude, it's all killer, no filler.
Nice. Uh-oh.
All right, George.
Anthony's got a headache, but
it must be his round because I'm going to say Lenny White also. Started out, the first album he ever plays on is Miles Davis Bitches Brew. Great way to start. He played in Azteca, Jamaica Boys, Virtu, of course, most known for Return to Forever. Like Vic said, the drumming on Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, as soon as that remaster came out, he should kiss that guy's feet because the drums forward in the mix, buried before in the original CD transfer. And now it's so forward. It's just incredible playing. And live in those years, he was a complete demon. So I'll say Lenny White.
Nice.
Nice, George.
All right, my number 4 is Simon Phillips.
Oh, yes.
I mean, the guy has done everything, right? As a young teenager, he played
Sin After Sin.
Sin After Sin by Judas Priest. He played on the first Michael Schenker Group album.
Mhm.
He spent a bunch of years in
The
Toto. He's done the last couple of albums with Derek Sherinian. He's got the Protocol band. I mean, whether it's fusion, prog, straight up rock, metal, pop, he can do it all. The guy is a consummate professional. He's a great arranger and songwriter and producer. And another guy who, I've had the pleasure of talking to, and what a nice guy with so many great stories. So, I think I have grown to love his playing more and more as the years have gone on, when you kind of realize just everything he's done in his career and still doing, because he's constantly busy and he just loves music to death. I mean, it's his life, and I love seeing that. So yeah, Simon Phillips, my number 4.
Nice.
Back to Vic.
All right. So when it comes to metal prog, and you think of, two of the bands that really started this whole thing, a lot of people think of Dream Theater, but when you talk to Portnoy and he tells you, the ones that were ahead of the Dream Theater times, it was going to be the bands like Queensrÿche and Fate's Warning, when they started really bringing the genre into definition, even though it was still not called prog metal then. But this drummer he has his unique sound. When you listen to him, there is nobody else like him, and that is Mark Zonder for Fate's Warning. Not the original drummer, but in my opinion, when people think of Fate's Warning and the sound that they got when they were just, prog and metal and technical, it's Mark Zonder's unique drumming that really adds to that, unlike anything else. So middle spot for me, Mark Zonder.
Nice pick, man.
And a quick shout out to book is about to come out, Destination Onward, written by our friend Jeff Wagner. Oh, Ken.
Oh, Ken has it, I'm sure.
It's shout out to.
You just got it?
All right.
Ooh, got a case full of them.
Nice.
Shout out to Jeff Wagner. So.
Yeah.
Well, and there's the new band A to Z with
A to
Zonder
Z.
and
He's also in Spirits of Fire with Chris Caffrey and Steve Giorgio, and great drummer.
Mark did a great album for us. We had this band called At War with Self, which was like an offshoot from Gordian Knot, and he played on that. Yep. And I love that he plays the little Ringo kit, and he gets a big sound out of the small kit.
Yep.
Scaled everything down, but man, he's a monster.
Yeah.
Good guy, nice guy too. Really nice guy.
Nice feel for heavy metal, for like prog metal drummer.
Sound, you can tell it's him, which is always cool.
I'm gonna do this again.
Am I up now for 3?
You are, Roy.
All right, cool. Well, this one was easy for me. My top 3 I knew right from the get-go, but what can you say? They just came back 13, 14 years after releasing the last album as Porcupine Tree. I'm gonna go Gavin Harrison. Man, I love this guy's playing. I mean, just from the first time listening to him with In Absentia, with stuff like Sound of Music, and then later on when they got a little bit more aggressive and started doing Fear of a Blank Planet stuff and Anesthetize and all that. And then his work with King Crimson, and he's played on a few other select records. That did a thing with Randy McStein, and his solo record where he reimagined some of the Porcupine Tree stuff was killer. Tasteful drummer, brings a bit of a jazz flair to what he plays, and just love it. I think he's one of the most unique drummers ever, and I can pick him out in 2 seconds. So Gavin Harrison.
Nice. Great drummer.
Anthony.
All right. Well, my number 3 is my favorite drummer who's not retired or dead.
Wow.
Gavin Harrison.
There you go.
As Roy, piggyback on what Roy said, right out of the gates of In Absentia he's such a kind of like a cog in the drummer world that he's able to get a band like Pineapple Thief 2 tours in the United States where it says on the ticket, Pineapple Thief featuring Gavin Harrison. So I've seen him with Porcupine Tree, King Crimson, and Pineapple Thief. So I've seen him about 7 times. He's the man. I mean, he really is. Anytime he's playing live, I try to go see him. He's just a joy to watch. He's got that feel. He's so effortless the way he plays. Anesthetize is one of my all-time favorite Porcupine Tree songs. The intro to that is just so Gavin. So Gavin's number 3.
Nice pick, man.
Awesome. Yep.
Chuck.
Oh man, well, my number 3 is from the country of Germany. I've mentioned them a few times on the show, Jackie Labazite. You know, what's it? This guy, as I mentioned before, is probably the most amazing drummer that most people don't even know about, man. You know, a very tasteful what's it, drummer. You know, in his time around, he played with Public Image Limited. You know, he's played with what's it, Can, obviously. You know, he's played with a lot of musicians. His love for James Brown and Motown, you know, he brought it to to krautrock. And you know, he legitimized everything that went on with Can. And he was an amazing drummer at his time, man. You know, he didn't fear playing with anyone, so whenever they needed him, he was there to play for these guys. My number 3, Jackie Levesite from Can.
Very cool. Eric.
I just felt that this drummer really solidified this band, and I don't want to say changed their sound, but when he came in, I just think he brought everything together. And I'm jumping on with Chuck, and I'm going with John Weathers from Gentle Giant, and Octopus was the album he came in on. And I think of him, I guess I don't even think of him as a replacement player. I always feel like John Weathers was always with them. I mean, obviously the early days, he had a couple different drummers. But I think with him, he was so, I mean, he could be like a Bonham. He just made them so solid, and they were playing so intricate around him, but yet he was right there and he could groove. I mean, if you listen to Just the Same or something like that, he could groove. Obviously he did, I think, xylophone, a lot of percussion on the albums as well. But I just think he made a big difference in Gentle Giant. And obviously he went on with them right through the end, played with Man for a number of years. I think he developed some kind of arthritic condition, so I don't think he can play anymore, but I absolutely love his drumming, and that's my number 3, John Weathers, Gentle Giant.
Nice.
Eric, he must have been a big, huge Oakland A's fan, because every time I see him, he's got that either
Always.
hat or jersey on.
Yep,
You
he
have
always
to-
had
you
that on.
You have to read the story of how he wound up getting that that uniform. It's a very funny story.
Cool.
All right, Ken and his picks.
Okay, so starting with the wiffle ball list, I got Billy Cobham. There you go. Great fusion drummer, but he started out as a jazz player. Started playing with Horace Silver.
Amazing.
He toured with Miles Davis, and then he split off with John McLaughlin to start Mahavishnu Orchestra. And then his solo career took off. He had Glass Menagerie, and he did some rock stuff. But for the most part, he stayed in the fusion realm. Great drummer, still going. Yeah, he did that one thing with Jack Bruce that wasn't very good. I'm going to jump over to the hardball list for a sec, and I'm going to go with Marco Miniman, who was mentioned. Very versatile guy, could play anything. Technical death metal, jazz rock, prog rock. He writes, he sings, he plays guitar. I mean, he's just a nice guy and a scary talent. And then for my prog rock list, I'm sorry, Pete, but I know I'm stealing your number 1, Christian Vander. So,
he is a really
Roy,
good
if you
drummer.
don't know,
He's a good
Pete
drummer.
despises magma.
You forget, forgetting his possible suspect political beliefs, which they'd be very disappointing if they're true. He is a powerhouse of a drummer. Very strong jazz influences. He was particularly interested in Elvin Jones. He had this mental connection to John Coltrane. So Elvin Jones was like his thing. And when you see Magma in concert, by the end of the show, you're not sure that Vander's even going to make it off the stage alive. Easily, and I've seen a lot of drummers. I've seen him, I've seen John Bonham, you name it, I've seen them all. He was, without a question, the most intense drummer I've ever seen. I mean, that guy he leaves it all on the stage. He's not a young man. And by the time it's over, you think they're going to have to call the paramedics. It's unreal seeing him play. I'm sorry, Pete, I had to do it. So
it's okay.
you'll pick somebody else.
Newsflash and spoiler alert: I won't be picking Christian Vander, but he is a really good player. I just
All right.
like
All
him. George.
Number 3 is a Hungarian player named Gergő Borlai.
Yep.
I think he's the best right now, technically. He's primarily a studio musician. He's played on like 500 albums. He's in a band called European Mantra.
Nice.
He does a lot of sessions with people everybody knows. He was in Tony McAlpine album a couple of years ago and did the tour. He's just he's the guy. He's like the first call guy now. When you want impressive drums on your album, he's pretty much the dude now. So for me, and he's a songwriter. He's got a string of solo albums. His last one, he did every song is a tribute to a particular drummer. He wrote the song in the style of that guy's music and then tries to play like him. And he actually pulls it off. You can hear it. So I'll say Gergő Borlai.
He has a nice Gad Bruford type style, and so he's pretty good, man. I like his drumming.
My number 3 is Bill Bruford. Chuck mentioned him.
Hasn't been mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, if he never did anything other than those couple of Yes albums and those couple of King Crimson albums, he'd still be up here. But then he did the Bruford albums. He did, that first UK album and, other stuff after that. Again, a guy probably more comfortable as a jazz drummer, but he also could do it all. And I always find it mind-boggling that he basically, after Close to the Edge, felt that he was too bored and restrained in Yes, and then after that album, and then went and jumped into the fire into King Crimson, where I think he was a little more happy. But yeah, I mean, an amazing guy, and it's just a shame he retired so early. We haven't gotten anything else out of him, but such a discography filled with great stuff. So yeah, Bill Bruford, my number 3.
I'm grateful he got mentioned because just
here.
his resume is, in the prog world is like he even got to tour with Genesis, filling in for guys, so that's probably the most impressive resume as far as, the classic prog. But all right, it's my turn.
Vic, that's gonna be our time machine. First stop is the Genesis tour of '76 with Bruford. That's gonna be our first stop.
Sounds good. Speaking of 76, one of the earliest albums that I remember hearing as a kid in my uncle's bedroom, it was this band that just had a really cool sound. It had a violin, it had great drums, it had great guitars, a killer singer, and I'm talking about the band Kansas. And I got to put Phil Yard in this list because, first of all, if anybody's been to a Kansas concert like now and they watch him play, he hits just as hard now as he was hitting back then, which is amazing that he has been able to maintain that style. And, Kansas was a real-time band for me. I got into Genesis later on. I got into King Crimson later on. I got into Yes later on. But Kansas, I was a fan when I first heard that back in the late 70s. And Phil is a big part of that. And the fact that he's still doing it, the longevity is impressive. And so he earns a spot on my list.
An amazing drummer. That first Kansas album, man. Actually, they're all pretty good with him. And so he's just an amazing drummer.
Very underrated drummer, and
he sure
really
is
talented.
Yep.
Yeah.
He plays on those 2 Hackett songs on Please Don't Touch that Steve Walsh sings.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That too. Yep.
I always think of Phil as kind of like I liken him to like Ian Pace from Deep Purple. 2 guys that have just been the backbone of their band since day one, and so both of them so underrated. Such an important part of each band.
Yeah, I'm glad you got mentioned for sure.
Right.
Okay, so I thought that I might get killed for putting this guy at number 2, but he's been mentioned a couple of times at number 5, so I'm feeling pretty good with Neil Peart, putting him at my number 2 spot. I almost felt like leaving him off because I thought it would be so obvious that everybody would have him, but it's for me at least, it seemed wrong to not include him. I mean, it's just so influential into everything that has come after, and all the drummers that we listen to after, and all the style of music that I've listened to after. I'm not even the biggest Rush fan. I like them, but I wouldn't put them in my, let's say, top 5 favorite bands. But there's no mistaking, some of that classic era, Hemispheres and all the way through Signals. That period is just phenomenal. And then even later on, still was doing some really great stuff. And live was always bringing it, even until the very end. So, got to include him here, Neil Peart.
Nice. Chuck.
My number 2 is from Gong, Pierre Marley. What's another amazing drummer? Probably just as underrated as everybody else that I mentioned beforehand. I try to put these guys out there because we already know about all these popular drummers, but when it comes to guys like this, this guy could swing just as much as any of the drummers out there. Very classy drummer, very classy percussionist, and he legitimized once again Gong. You listen to Gong, and then also his version of Gong as well. He brought the band Gong became a bit more jazzier oriented, but an amazing drummer, and that's my number 2, Pierre Marley. Gong.
Chuck, did I ever tell my Pierre Marley story?
No.
So I saw Mike Oldfield, his first U.S. show. I think it was '82 at my father's place in Roslyn, and I'm watching the show. I didn't know everybody in the lineup. I knew Morris Pert because I had seen him play with Brand X. And Morris Pert was in the band, and I'm like, "Who the hell is this drummer that is kicking Morris Pert's ass all night long?" It was Pierre Marley.
He was amazing, man.
He was ridiculous.
He really was, man. You listen to his stuff, man. He was just an amazing drummer. And it's funny because he took over from another amazing drummer in Gong. And Pip Powell. Pip Powell is another great drummer. They just but I think that Pierre Marley that he actually fit the band a bit more than Pip, and Pip was just amazing with National Health.
Good choice. Eric.
Okay, my number 2, Pete, I'm going with you, Simon Phillips.
Nice.
I've been doing a lot of homework, catching up with the Sharinian catalog, and this has been playing since I got it earlier this year. And you mentioned, his resume, how many people he's played with, studio or live. And I've gotten all the protocols since I picked that up and 4. But just incredible. And like you said, I'm getting into that Sharinian catalog, listening to all the stuff he played on there. Fantastic drummer, versatile, can do it all. So I'm going with Simon Phillips as my number 2.
Ken.
Okay, I got Elvin Jones, power drummer. Started. Well, I don't know if he started, but he played for years, and best known for playing with John Coltrane's quartet. And then subsequently, he was a band leader on his own, and he recorded for Blue Note and Impulse. He's considered to be the master of polyrhythm. And one of my favorite albums he did was kind of a pretty easy album to track down called On the Mountain. He recorded it in a trio with Jan Hammer and Gene Perla. And this is where he kind of crossed over into jazz rock. And when Hammer is playing the Hammond organ, it sounds just like outtakes from National Health. It's a fantastic record, and you can find it easily. Off my metal list, I have Sean Reinert, the late Sean Reinert. He was able to handle the technicality of Cynic and Gordian Knot. He kind of reached a point in his career where he seemed to lost a bit, but he regrouped and he got himself back into shape physically and as a drummer. When I saw him play with Cynic on their reunion tour, he was unbelievable. I mean, he was like a windmill machine, an absolute monster, great player. On the prog rock side, I got Bill Bruford. Bill's my number 2. Is a very distinct style. The way he attacks the kit is to me, he's very identifiable. You could almost tell when Bill's playing the drums, if you just walk in and listen to something cold. The thing is with him, the reason why I made him number 2 and not my number 1 is the way he plays. I don't think he is playing swings very much. I'm kind of unconvinced by his jazz playing. I'm not a big fan of Earthworks. I liked him as a rock drummer, Crimson and Yes, and when he was doing fusion, when he was doing his solo stuff, the Bruford band, great. But Earthworks, not so much for me. Didn't really work for me. But he's my number 2.
Funny that you mentioned Elvin Jones. I was listening to John Coltrane's Sonship on my way home.
Okay.
And you listen to this guy. This is a guy that just, there's a reason why Mitch Mitchell and a lot of these drummers, the Allman Brothers, they revered John Coltrane. Just for that amazing drumming that he was. I was just listening to that album and I just was just lamenting that I wish that I could have seen these guys live, man.
You were listening to Sonship on the way home, man.
Yes.
Yeah, you must be a lot of fun at parties, I guess. That's kind of an out album.
It really is. I could have picked
Yeah. Oh, but Elvin Jones, man, he was a force.
He really was,
He
man.
was just amazing player. So he made a great album with Richie Davis called Heavy Sounds.
Yep.
You know that album?
Yes, I do.
Great record on Impulse. Great record. But
I'm sorry. I love the mention of Sean Reinert. That's top-notch drummer that took the genre of death metal and made it into a musician's genre with his playing and his technicality, as opposed to just blast beats and growling. He just brought a technicality that was fusion, and it was terrific to see. So glad he got mentioned. Good job, Ken.
Thank you.
All right, George.
Somebody appreciates me.
Reiner was a big Electric Band fan. My number 2 is Electric Band, Dave Weckel. A guy I've only been playing a couple of years. When I first hear him, a friend of mine showed him to me, brought the record over, and was just blew my mind completely, like a whole different thing. Could tell that he grew up on GAD, but he took it to another level. I mean, and he's just, from Electric Band on, he was like a first call session guy that just knocked it out on everything he was on. He even played on a Madonna record. I mean, the guy was in demand in a big, big way, and still to this day sounds exactly the same. I mean, he hasn't slowed down at all. So I'll go with Dave Weckel.
Great choice. My number 2 is Neil Peart from Rush. Could have been number 1. I had a hard time deciding between my number 1 and my number 2. But Neil is amazing, great songwriter. All those classic albums, like have already been mentioned. I could listen to him playing drums on Moving Pictures and Farewell to Kings and 2112 and Hemispheres and all that stuff. And he was great up until the end. And every time I saw Rush live, guy was just a powerhouse and technical, but not overly so. And one of the greats of all time. He's missed. He's definitely missed. So that's my number 2. Number 1s. Here we go. Back to Vic.
All right, let's do it.
Well, I'm kind of following Pete with the Neil Peart, excuse me, and I'm gonna sort of steal what George did here. So my top is, I can't really separate these two guys. It's Neil Peart and Mike Portnoy. Neil Peart is the reason why I pay attention to drums the way that I pay attention to drums. I'm not a drummer. I play guitar and bass. I can play percussion. I can sit and play the drums, but that is what just opened my mind to the fact that I will never sit behind a drum kit and try that. But he is what made Rush for me just so different. And he inspired a lot of people leading into Mike Portnoy. There's no way that I can't put Mike Portnoy at the top of my list when you consider that Dream Theater came in at a perfect time when grunge was just everything and solos had disappeared and everything was kind of sloppy and really raw, and these guys come in with just a sound that separated everything. Images and Words just celebrated their 30th anniversary, and that was an album that really changed a lot of our lives. Roy probably has a lot more to say about this, but then Portnoy starts with Transatlantic, because he promoted or he talked a lot about Spock's beard, and then he plays, leaves Dream Theater, and then he just goes totally off, even to the point where the shirt that I'm wearing, this is a cruise that Portnoy organized back before cruises had taken off, especially in the prog world. I think Cruise to the Edge had already gone out once before 2014, but this was amazing to see Transatlantic live, and just that setup, and Spock's beard was on there, and there was a reunion with Neil Morse that was over the top, all because Portnoy, not only is he a great drummer, but just the ambassador that he is for the prog world. And of course he can play heavy metal, so he has metal allegiance, but Flying Colors, getting together with Steve Morse and Neil Morse, that's a dream lineup. In my opinion, the super bands of super bands, and just how he continues to play. And I love the fact that his influences outside of Peart, you're talking about guys that, everybody says, well, they're not the most technically proficient, but they're all about how they play. When you go Ringo, when you go, Bonham, when you go Lars Ulrich, he's just talking about how they play. Keith Moon, it's so, and that's so he has the technicality and the precision of Peart, but he's got the soul and the musicianship of all those guys, and just all the bands that he's in and everything else. I've spoken enough, probably handing it off to Roy. So Mike Portnoy and
you
Neil
pretty
Peart.
much said everything I was going to say, but I'm going to man up, and I am going to split Neil Peart and Mike Portnoy and make Mike Portnoy number one, and not slot them into two positions, into one position. But there may be, just to say a little bit more, because Vic pretty much said, what would need to be said. But look, in 92, Images and Words, discovering that album alone changed my life, changed a lot of people's lives that were looking for something like this to listen to. And really, for the first time, I had always listened to drums, but you're talking leading up to that through the 80s, even with bands like Yes and stuff like that, the drumming wasn't much happening. There was peripherally maybe things going on in the jazz world, but if you're talking about rock and metal, there you had not much. And he really brought the drums right to the forefront in the style of the 70s, classic stuff. So it was the first time I really paid attention to drums in that way. And, he's gone on to be in a lot of my favorite bands, and influenced, like, Vic said, bringing more bands to attention in the whole genre. And then what I think is that he has a feel for regular rock too, which is what separates him. I think he maybe isn't the most technical now anymore, since now that there's all these younger guys that can do whatever the hell is insane, but he can play with, stuff like a power pop band or a straight up metal band, and has that kind of feel, which I think some might argue other drummers that play prog metal miss. So my favorite drummer, probably until the end, will be Mike Portnoy.
Yeah, his stuff with Winery Dogs is totally different than anything else he does.
Exactly.
Straight up, just kind of bluesy hard rock, right?
Yep,
power
and he
trio
fits
type.
right in. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Anthony, you're number one.
All right, well, I'm gonna go with my number two because you forgot about me.
Did I?
Did we?
My number two is Bill Bruford. Yeah, everybody forgot about me. My number two is Bill Bruford.
You spoke up.
I don't know what else needs to be said. Fusion Giant, King Crimson, Yes, especially those three magical albums. The Yes album, Close to the Edge, and Fragile. And then number one is The Professor, my all-time favorite Rush record, Permanent Waves. What more can say about The Professor? He's totally missed. Not only was he a monster on the drum kit, but he was a monster lyricist too. He changed the whole structure, how Rush was going to go. With Rutsy, they could have probably been just like a rock band. Neil took them into another dimension. So we miss you, Neil. He's my number one.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, you should have spoke up, Anthony. I apologize for that. I knew I was going to get screwed up.
I didn't want to say anything. It's okay. Ken's got like 10 hardball lifts, so.
My fault. Sorry, it's my fault, Anthony.
Oh.
All right, Chuck, you're number one.
Well, just gonna give a little homage to like drummers like Carl Palmer, Nick Mason, these, amongst some of the heavyweights that are out there, to name two. But I can't separate these two drummers over here. Most probably would know the two drummers that I'm going to pick. I can't pick between either one, and there's no 1A or 1. One is Bruford, and the second one is Phil Collins. But to that, Phil Collins, very mutable. I know there was mention of Tears for Fears. His drumming on what's the Women in Chains. What's it tells you how much feel he has for drumming. This is in the 80s, but people were assuming that he was becoming a little bit too electrified. But you go to the stuff that he did with Brand X. Even early on in Genesis live, while they have some pretty crappy sounding bootlegs out there, and so, but you listen to his drumming and Mike Rutherford's bass playing, and even then, and so, great drummer, man. A very mutable drummer, very exciting drummer, and at the time he was once a blazer himself, a big influence on Neil Peart. He always spoke about how much selling England by the pound meant to him. And then you also have Bill Bruford. Bill Bruford being distinctive as with the distinctive snare sound of his precise drumming. You listen to his stuff with Yes, the 4 albums that he did with Yes, and wish that there was more stuff with him live that they released with him. And then he goes on to King Crimson, where he becomes this otherworldly drummer. And then then he goes on to play a little bit with Genesis live, and then he went and played with UK. Bruford, his Earthworks, these two just amazing drummers and very influential drummers. So these two are both of my number ones, Phil Collins and Bill Bruford. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Eric.
All right, I'm going down the well-trodden path, but it's my favorite band. My favorite drummer is Phil Collins. Between his work with Genesis,
I'm surprised. This is good.
And Brand X, I just think he's a great drummer. Obviously, people who know him now, or maybe know that you got to go back and listen to that early stuff. He's phenomenal. Great. I think where Phil might get over some other people is I think he's got the best feel of most drummers I've heard in rock music. He just has a great feel.
Yep.
He's obviously got the technical ability, but I just think those records and hearing him or seeing him live on those old videos, he's just incredible. So that's my number one, Phil Collins.
Nice. Ken.
Okay, my number one. So from the jazz world, I got Art Blakey. Art was one of the first power drummers in jazz. The guy had incredible chops, and he wasn't afraid to show them off.
Yep.
Anyone who was anyone in the jazz world played with his jazz messengers. He was a great composer, and he had a lot of different influences. In the early 50s, he recorded Drum Suite, which is totally out there, large scale composition. He was just doing things that other drummers were not doing. I mean, he was so far advanced from other drummers at that time. And as I said, he was an amazing drummer. He wasn't afraid to show it off. I mean, there wasn't an album where he didn't do some monster drum solo. I've got this one album he did for Blue Note called Mosaic, which is a classic. The very first track, he plays this absolutely absurd drum solo. The first track. I mean, it's like, he was great. So that's what I got from the jazz world. And I gotta say, from the metal world, I gotta say these Prog Report guys, they're smart because, well, they know Mike Portnoy is going to watch this, right? It's okay, it's not so bad. You kiss a little ass once in a while. So, Mike, you're my number one. I mean, he was, he's like the metal octopus. I mean, he's a powerhouse drummer that pushed the Dream Theater machine into the prominence of, and they became the preeminent prog metal band. And then he had that other side, the softer side, playing as these guys said, with Transatlantic, playing Neil Morse band. And then he's got Sons of Apollo. He's doing Adrenaline Mob, which is something totally different. And then
Winery Dogs.
yeah, one toured with was it
Twisted Sister,
Avenged Sevenfold. I mean,
That's
very
it.
versatile, great player. Had that nice big kid up on stage. Always fun to watch him play, and I enjoy him. And so for the metal world, he's my number one. Mike, I hope you liked the little lip service I gave you there. And from the prog rock world, this is pretty predictable. For me, Carl Palmer. And to me, he's my favorite drummer. He's a bit technical. The knock against Carl has always been he has trouble keeping time. But he was, a drummer who was very influenced by Buddy Rich, very forward-thinking drummer. 1973, he's playing a prototype drum synthesizer. I don't know, who else was doing that in 1973? After the brain salad surgery tours, the 2 tours, he went to the Royal Academy to study tune percussion. He wrote a percussion concerto that was recorded for Works, but it was left off due to the length, and it got released later on Carl Palmer Career Anthology. And the only thing I really don't like about Carl's playing is he plays the same damn solo for the past 50 years. I mean, when he starts to do a solo, I know exactly when that shirt is coming off, and I know when I could just head out to the bathroom for the pee break, But other than that, for me, I just sit back and I enjoy watching him play. And ELP is my favorite band, so that was an easy choice. Carl Palmer is my number one.
Cool. Yeah, he has been playing that same damn solo.
He hasn't changed at all. Asia, ELP, whatever. It's the same damn thing. And I know. I always know when that shirt's coming off.
Yep. And now at this stage of the game, we wish he would keep the shirt on, right?
He seems to still be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he's in decent shape, not like he was back in the
Well, no, but he's like 72 now,
Yeah.
Black belt in karate. I mean, yeah.
Yep. Just so you know, I did invite Mike Portnoy to guest on the show tonight, but he had a prior commitment. So
See, and I thought it'd been so cool if he would have come on with like a Mexican wrestling mask, and you would have called him like El Magnifico or something like that. That would have been so great.
Miguel Macho.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been awesome.
George, you're number one.
My number one has got a ridiculous resume. It's Dennis Chambers.
Oh yeah, hasn't been mentioned yet. Yeah,
I'm so glad he got mentioned.
There's always somebody we forget, right?
Yeah, I forgot all about him. Yep.
He starts playing clubs in Baltimore at the age of 4. He ends up in Parliament Funkadelic at the age of 12. Miles Davis tries to get him to tour with him when he's 13. He has to say no because his mom won't let him go on tour. He comes to the Fusion World's attention in '88, playing with Schofield. Like from the 90s through the 2000s, he's pretty much the session guy. I mean, tons of impressive performances, way too many to list, but then he's been in a lot of bands too, showing his range. He's in Steely Dan, he's in Santana, he's in Niacin, all these bands to just all different skill sets. Probably the best funk drummer and the best fusion drummer on the planet. To me, it's no chance. Dennis Chambers easy. Cab,
yeah. I completely forgot about him. I saw him with Santana once and with Mike Stern once. Oh man, and with Niacin as well.
He's like a cross between Cobham and Tony Williams. I mean,
the only time I saw him was with Niacin, man. That was unbelievable.
Yeah,
man. What a show he put on. I mean, just his presence. His presence, the way he just sat behind the kit and just like a machine, man.
I remember he was playing with 2 great musicians in Niacin, and he just was of another level.
Yep. Yeah, that's an oversight by me. He should have been in my top 5. I completely forgot about him.
George saves the day.
What was that?
George saves the day.
George saves the day.
Yeah, saves the day. Good. I want to echo something that Eric said a little bit ago. He was talking about how, being a guitar player, he doesn't always listen to drums a lot. And I've been guilty of that my whole life. So when a drummer completely wows me, and sometimes I even listen to him over the guitar player, who in this one band, the guitar player is amazing. This guy had to be my number one. And I think because of the stuff that he did in the Mahavishnu Orchestra and a whole bunch of those early solo records he did, and even the stuff he did with Miles Davis, for me, Billy Cobham is the most amazing drummer I think I've ever listened to. When that guy plays, I mean, I just think of like the Between Nothingness and Eternity live album from Mahavishnu, when him and McLaughlin are going back and forth, and I'm like, this guy is uncanny because he's keeping step with McLaughlin, who's firing off licks like a million miles an hour, and Cobham's right there with him. He's got tremendous feel. He can play funk. I mean, you know, his first solo album is just absolutely amazing. All those Mahavishnu albums are amazing. If you ever listen to Jazz is Dead, which is this kind of like jam band fusion thing that started in the 90s, he's played some stuff on there, which is incredible too. So I don't know, for me, one of the handful of guys who I will stop and really try to tune everything else out and just listen to the drums. And that, I think, is what made him number one. Not that I don't listen to the playing of the other guys I mentioned, but something about Billy Cobham, when he's playing, I'm listening to everything he's doing. So that's my number one.
Nice.
Guys, got any honorable mentions, Vic? That will start with you.
Vinny Colaiuta.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I just
Right on.
Yep.
And actually, one that I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with any Latin jazz circles. Being born in Puerto Rico and my dad being a Latin percussionist at first, and he there is a Cuban drummer. He defected Cuba back in 1990, and if you ever want to see some really cool drumming, you need to look up on YouTube. With I'm trying to think what's the name of the video. It's 54th Street. It's Calle 54.
Okay.
With Michelle Camillo on piano and Anthony Jackson on bass. This drummer is it's Horacio Hernandez. It's Horacio El Negro Hernandez. Horacio Hernandez, if you want to gringo it up. He's played with Santana. I think on his Supernatural was the album that he played at. So he's well known, just in musician circles, but he's amazing. And I wasn't sure if you guys had heard of it. George, I love your shirt, by the way. Shout out has to go out to Ray Hearn. The guy is a beast. His polyrhythms are amazing, and the last 4 albums for Haken, starting with Affinity, his level has just gone off the charts. So I appreciate you wearing that shirt. So, and George and Chuck, just great feedback. Chuck, are you a drummer?
No.
Okay.
I did play bass for a while.
Gotcha. You could tell you have sort of that connection with drummers, and nice, very nice job. So,
and my wife is also Puerto Rican as well.
All right, very good.
As is mine.
Oh,
I'm from the same area.
Yes.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right, Roy, you got any honorables?
Just a few. Ray Hearn was going to be. Vic and I, we're very much in line with a lot of the music. We go back a long ways. Vic and I are 25 some odd years or something. So
yes, sir.
Ray Hearn's a definitely new favorite. Also from Leprous, Bard Kolstad, who's just a ridiculous, phenomenal drummer. I don't know if this would have counted, but from Dave Matthews Band, Carter Bruford would have been.
He's an amazing drummer.
I consider as a real favorite of mine as well.
Incredible
obviously
pocket.
Bill Bruford and Simon Phillips, I would have to include it, but they were covered. So,
Anthony.
Yeah, I got 2. One is, if you ever think that Phil Collins is not a great drummer, listen to this record. This album will blow your mind. And then Alan White, his drumming on Relay is infamous. I mean, it's fantastic. One of the best albums I think he's ever drummed on.
I'd agree. Yeah. May he rest in peace. Yep. Chuck.
2 drummers that weren't mentioned. What's a Jack Digeney and Tony Williams. What's that? As far as jazz goes, and so during the 60s, 2 amazing drummers. What's that? Both powerhouse pocket-filled drummers that influenced a lot of drummers going into the 70s. I preferably myself, and so I would usually take those 2 over Billy Cobham anytime. And Billy Cobham is a tremendous drummer. but I'd rather prefer to listen to these two guys beforehand, and also Alphonse Mouzon as well.
Yep, cool. Eric?
Well, I only had two that weren't mentioned. The first I'm going to mention, it's not so much his technical ability. He's a good drummer, excellent drummer. But listen to Script for a Jester's Tear, and then listen to Fugazi and see how a drummer can elevate a band. Ian Mosley.
Yep.
And my other choice was Rod Morgenstein from the Dregs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Underrated. That's a good one.
Good choice. Yep. Ken?
I only have one. Everybody's been mentioning. The only guy that I could think of that didn't get mentioned was Max Roach.
Oh.
And
Yep.
great jazz drummer.
Roy Haynes.
Very innovative. Never crossed over into the jazz fusion world, as far as I know. Just stuck to his guns, and great player.
Don't forget Roy Haynes.
Roy Haynes, yeah. Sure, also great.
George?
I would echo Vic's pick of Vinny Colaiuta, total chops monster, a session player extraordinaire. Steve Smith, tons of great work. Everybody knows Ponte, McAlpine, just lots of incredible playing. A couple of metal guys, Bobby Jarzambek, Fates Warning, Spastic Inc., one of the best metal drum performances of all time. And Thomas Lejean from Andromeda and ACT, another really technical player, really great part writer, Thomas Lejean.
Cool. Yeah, most of mine have been mentioned. I'm trying to, I had like Gavin and Marco and Virgil, Lenny White, Terry Bozzio, Phil Collins, Chad Wackerman. Did anybody mention Chad?
Nope.
Okay. Tony Williams, Carl Palmer, Steve Smith, Steve Gadd.
Yep. Mentioned a couple
Weckel,
times.
Alphonse Mouzon, Phil Ehart, and how about Jason Rulo from Symphony X?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's all I had.
I have two more.
Yeah.
Chester Thompson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Never gets the love.
And George will attest to this. Danny Heifetz from Mr. Bungle.
Yeah, he's good.
Wow, yeah.
An amazing drummer. He doesn't drum much because he moved to Australia, but his stuff on Mr. Bungle, and he's drummed with other stuff. The guy is just amazing, man. On a small kit like the way he does, he gets a lot of use out of it, man. Very technical drummer, man.
Danny Gottlieb from Pat Metheny Group.
Yes. Yep. We can go on.
we could be here all day, right?
What about Kenny Denard? Kenny Denard.
Yep.
Would Vinnie Paul be too metal for this list?
Probably, yeah.
Oh well, in the metal world, BT Bam's Richardson is a solid drummer. I really like his style.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How he could keep up with all that. That's just cardio to the extreme.
In the comments, somebody's gonna list the drummer from Meshuggah and said, "How could you leave him off?"
Oh, Thomas Hawk. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's always somebody.
Yep. No, should have been mentioned.
And there's going to be a handful of people that can be like, well, you got to mention John Bonham and Keith Moon because Zeppelin and the Who had a couple prog songs, right? So great drummers, yes, but not for this list, right? Yeah.
We also forgot about John Heisman.
Oh, yeah.
He was on my list originally. Actually, he just kind of got knocked off.
John Heisman.
What about Tony Thompson from the Power Station?
Oh man!
Everybody just froze.
I just checked my internet.
He is a
connection.
badass drummer.
I thought there was something wrong with Zoom for a second. Oh man!
All right, there you have it, everybody. So our favorite drummers in the prog rock, prog metal, and fusion and jazz realms. So list your favorite 5 or 10 or however many you want to do. If you want to be like Ken, you can list as many as you want, right?
15.
Hardball, softball, wiffle ball, pool ball, badminton, whatever you want to do, whatever picks you want to do, put them in the comments below. And I do want to thank both Roie and Vic for joining us here today from the Prog Report. You guys want to give a plug to anything you've done over on your site recently?
We do a lot of similar things. Podcasts. We don't do nearly as many as you. We could never do what you guys do, which is incredible. So kudos to this channel. But yeah, just progreport.com and Follow us on our audio podcast, which we have some other stuff going on all the time. So check us out.
Sounds good. Cool. So stay tuned next week for another episode of In the Prog Seat. And don't forget, tomorrow here on the channel, it's Wednesday. It's What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility Day. So we've got a handful of new album reviews for you tomorrow. So for all of you who care to listen to the new stuff and want to hear about it, tomorrow's the day. So tune in for that. And visit us also on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, all together.
All the damn
All the damn time. All the can time.
All the damn time. So what do we got for Vic Giol, Anthony Ferrara, Roie Avin, Chuck Alvarez, Eric Porter, Ken Golden, and George Lemie? I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. See you next week here on In the Prog Seat.
Good night, everyone.